All right. Hi, Jim Warren, Mark Adler, and Andrew Alden here with MPA's Community Check-In.
Nice.
We're just going around the community, checking in with people to find out how they're bearing under these conditions. So,
Go ahead.
I was just going to ask you, you're Jim Warren. You're obviously Jim Warren. What is it that you do, and how long have you been doing it?
Yes, I still am Jim Warren. What do? I am a set decorator, production designer, and occasional art director. Most recently for a lot of Netflix level movies, and with a background in industrial production for many years before I got into this.
Indeed, that's right. Now, so you're a single man, and you live in Michigan.
I do. However, most of what I've been doing for the last 5 years or so has been in Ohio, mostly because of the lack of incentives in Michigan, as we all know. It was there, now it's gone, and so many of us are gone as well. And it's taken me to Ohio. It's taken a lot of people to Atlanta and to Los Angeles. It's taken me to Ohio, which is nice because everybody here is super nice and I enjoy being here and I'm close to home. So that doesn't hurt things.
Absolutely. So, no incentives, but that's state by state. But this thing that we're fighting right now, this COVID-19, that's everywhere. And that is the anti-incentive.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah, I have a feeling that this is going to make incentives or a lack of incentives look totally inconsequential comparatively. Although I have hope. We'll see what happens with all of this. It's the biggest hope that I've got as far as this coming back around quickly is the fact that the entire nation is home now and they're ripping through their Netflix subscriptions. They're ripping through anything that's on Amazon or Apple or any of the streaming services. Yeah. And I think that there's going to come a point sooner rather than later where production is going to have to resume, provided that we're not in such a dire situation that it absolutely cannot. I think that there'll be a demand that will come up probably midsummer. I think we just have to hold on till midsummer. That's my feeling right now anyway. And this is only a few days into it. Let's see what I have to say 30 days.
It's a good, insightful feeling because, I've been trying to explain to my wife and my daughter that, films are made, films are sent to film festivals. And as you know, Cannes was just postponed, paused. So
like nothing else,
they're not going to be distributed, and
no, they're not. Although in some ways I think that they will, because I think that what you just saw over the last weekend with all of these currently running films being taken right to video, I think that's probably going to become the new normal, and this is going to be the catalyst that does it. Because I think that the studios, and I don't have any insight, what do I know about the studios? But I think that they've wanted to do that for a long time. And that the theaters, the traditional theater system has been in the way of all of that. And I think this might just be what they're going to do. I mean, I think that they'll continue to release films to theaters because directors will want it that way. It's a lot more legitimate than it showing up on your TV. But I think that a lot of them are going to end up going directly to quote unquote video right away.
Do you think it's...
Go ahead, Andrew.
Do you think it's going to be matched kind of like with the way Netflix rolled out Scorsese's Irishman, where it's kind of
Perfect.
Like...
Yep, 100%. That's exactly it. But instead of it, right now it kind of puts a stain onto a movie if it's done that way, if it doesn't have a great big theatrical release to begin with now. And I think that's going to fade away, and pretty quickly, because it's going to become the normal for the next year, because I think that people are not going to go back to theaters, rightly or wrongly. I think they think that theaters are like hotbeds of disease in the dark. I don't, truthfully, I don't actually think that's true, but I think that people aren't going to want to gather in great big groups. And so this is going to become the new normal for long enough that it will become a standard.
Do you think that this will like pretty much kill independent theaters?
That's a good question. It's sure not going to do them any good, is it?
I mean, they're the weakest. I mean, if you
Yeah,
have
they
a
really-
guy, you know, I mean, my friend owns Phoenix Theaters, and you know, they make a great effort to, you know, put comfort, you know, cleaning their seats and, you know, taking care of people, but it's hard for them. Certainly hard for them.
What do you think is going to happen?
I see the scenario that you're talking about. It's possible that we'll lose some theaters. It's gonna be a regroup. It's gonna be a reboot. And
I think we're going
possible.
to lose a lot of everything, period. I mean,
Yeah.
the weakest restaurants, the weakest everything is
Right.
all going to go by the wayside. And truthfully, you know, and this is totally unrelated to entertainment or any of that. It's going to be really, really close to our grandparents' depression. It's going to take a while to get past this. And I think some of it is I don't want to say manufactured, because that's not the right word at all, but some of it is perceived. That's the word. Some of it is because of people's perception. It may not even be because of their financial state, but 3 months from now, it's going to be because of their financial state. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Indeed. Right. We're just waiting and watching. You know, I'm reading the newspapers. I'm reading trade magazines. I'm seeing things happening. A big discussion about 55,000 people filed for unemployment in 3 days. Yeah, right,
Yep.
right. And some people don't have the ability to get unemployment. You know, they're actual freelancers with 1099 income.
And there's a lot of that. And there's a lot of people. Everybody thinks that people in our business make a ton of money, and compared to some people, we do. But it's not a business that makes you wildly wealthy if you're, you know, a frontline worker like we are. I mean, you know, anybody below the line makes an hourly wage.
Right,
and
right.
It's
and
a good wage. I'm not complaining about what I make.
No, it's a good wage.
It's a good wage, but it's at the same time, it's an hourly wage.
Yeah,
you know,
and you're on hiatus, you know, often enough. You know?
I tried to explain that to somebody not long ago, where it's like, okay, yeah, I make a decent amount every hour that I work, but I'm kind of like an actor. When I was producing, I remember people in production with me that would squeak about what actors made a day, which is a lot.
Sure.
But what you have to factor into it is actors don't work very much. They're lucky if they get, you know, let's just say they're lucky if they get a week a month for most actors.
Right.
And we're kind of the same way. It's like, if you look at what we make, we do okay. But at the same time, there's big chunks of time when we don't work. And then if you amortize that out over the course of a year and you sit there and go, yeah, I made good money the weeks I was working, but I only worked 60% of that year. All of a sudden, it's like, wow, I'm actually not making that much in an hour as I thought, am I?
Yeah. I mean, there's an argument about the fat cats, you know, the guys that are taking all the chances making these films. You know, they do, for all their, you know, greed and wealth and that, they do take big chances. And it takes something like this event to push them back down. It's going to take a lot from that whole group of people. And again, it's going to be a reboot. Some of the weaker ones are going to go away. Some of the, you know, the studio's own independence, we'll see how that kind of sorts out.
My hope. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Andrew.
Oh, no, I was just saying, I think my best case scenario for this whole thing is going to be that if we're going to move away from the tentpole system, because if movies, the big major studios that plan on like a Marvel movie, a Star Wars movie, like the tentpole system, that they'll be like, oh, it's going to be much more easier to make 40 films for $5 million instead of like two movies for like $300 million, you know, that there could be more work for people like us and everyone we've been talking to, people who are, you know, who are the workers, who are the worker drones on these things, because that they would rather like have a great return on investment on one of these smaller movies, that coupled with Parasite being a relatively cheap movie that made a ton of money right before this all happened, just because they might want to like minimize the risk, and the tentpole system is a big risk, big reward system, right?
Indeed. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you know, the sweet spot for us making incentive films in Michigan was those $5 to $16 million films that have enough money within them to hire locals and to buy local services, where the big
and
ones don't do that.
To pay full wages and all of that. But let's face it, just like Andrew said, if you've got one movie in the state that's got a budget of 150 million in it, that's great. I mean, and goodness knows, I'd love to see that. But at the same time, if you take that and break it into chunks, and you've got 7 movies that are $16 million movies, like you said, then there's a lot more crew that get jobs from 7 $16 million movies than for $160 million movies. Right. Even though my math doesn't add up there, you know what I mean?
No. It's a valid point. Yeah.
And it's so, yes, that would be the optimum, would be to see us back to having a bunch of mid-level movies. And let's face it, those are the movies that are in production right now, because there's a lot of streaming services out there, and that's where they all go to, either upfront or eventually.
Yeah, indeed. Right. So now, you know, no one's working, and I'll amend that. I think some people are still working. I'm seeing smatterings of working going on, small
Wonderful.
crews. I just got a call for a job on the 27th, just, you know, prompter, camera, lighting guy.
Do they need a PA?
Yeah, right. That's it. You know, it's everyone's going to run for the projects, and you know, I hope that people will, you know, take care in that. We don't want to set any precedents for working for free or working cheap or, you know, that kind of thing. So it's a new world already. We can see it coming.
I agree, but it's always a new world, isn't it? I mean, everything goes through phases. And this is a massively drastic phase, but it's at the end of all of it, we'll be fine. We really will. I mean, as a set of jobs, as a country, as humanity, we'll be fine. This is just part of life. Life goes in cycles.
That's it.
Yeah.
I wanted to back up a little bit, because you've worn a number of hats in your time. You started in the corporate world. I think that's when I met you.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And that was the corporate producing that you mentioned?
I started as a production assistant, like everybody did. I started a little bit late because my background's actually in design, and I started doing design work for my 20s. And at the end of my 20s, I realized that wasn't going to make me happy for the rest of my life. And I ended up going from actually making a decent amount of money doing design work to becoming a production assistant at very, very little a day when I was about 27 or 28, because I knew that was the time to change my career. So I did. And I got very lucky. I ended up as a producer at VSI for a while. And then, you know, it became a producer director, and went to Jack Morton for a long while, and then went to MVP for a long while. So that was like 15 years of my career there. And so I did a lot of exactly what you would expect. I did a lot of industrials. I did training films, and a lot of the stuff that went up on the big screens at the auto show at that point, and what I used to call pretty slow motion car photography, where the car goes around the corner and it kicks up leaves in slow motion as it does so. And when the bottom dropped out of Detroit and there were no jobs to be had during the bankruptcies of all the car companies, was exactly when the movie incentives came in. And I thought, okay, I've always designed my own stuff anyway. I know how to do this. I have a design background. And I have a production background, and I switched over slowly from being a producer director to becoming a set deck buyer, and then eventually a set decorator. And that's how that all worked.
Fantastic. And you're able to do that. Now, when you're not working like this, do you have a contingency for yourself? You know,
I pray a lot.
I was alluding to this side gig that you have. I'm not sure.
Oh yeah, you know what? I've been really lucky. Which I've got a company that I started a few years ago that makes mannequins of all things, and so that's between the two of those, they've kept me in business all this time. And it's a small company. But it makes enough where between the two of them, you know, the mortgage gets paid. So there you go.
That's it. That's how it's done. That's how it's done.
Yeah. Think of me as a corporation. It's like, this
right.
division isn't making money. Maybe that division will make money.
Jimbo Incorporated. I love it.
I like that.
Yeah. That's cool, man. I love it. So are you in Ohio right now, or are you in Michigan?
I'm in Ohio because I decided that I just got done. I was working on a Netflix movie that was partially shooting here and partially shooting in Romania. And we were supposed to shoot the first 5 days of this movie here. And we got through about 2.5 days of it before they shut us down.
Was that the 12th or the 13th? Do you recall?
What's today's? This would have been, our last day would have been Sunday. So that's like what am I at here?
Yeah, the 15th would have been Sunday last.
Yeah. Okay. So 15th was our last day.
Okay.
And we got the movie set in Cleveland. So we got enough footage, I think, for them to set the film properly when they pick up production again in Romania. We'll see. They say that they want to come back, and I believe that they do want to come back. I hope that they do.
Indeed.
And so with wrap up and everything, I just got done finally yesterday was my last day. And honestly, we'll see how long it's going to take before I get onto something else again. I think it's going to be months and months and months. I think we're going to be looking at what we're taping here today in, say, December of 2020 or May of 2021, and all of us are going to have had one good job between now and then. And I hope I'm wrong, but I don't think I am. So we'll see. I think it's going to be a very long, protracted minute before we start up again. Again, I also think that there's going to need to be content for all of the streaming services. So I think that might be our savior right there, is just that in order to keep those services afloat, which they're going to want to, they're going to have new content or they're going to lose customers.
Right.
Especially after their customers have been cooped up for goodness knows how long and have gone through every single thing that they want to watch.
They're going to be hungry, man. They're going to be hungry.
They are. And that might save us. It really might. So we'll see. What do you guys think? What about, there's a big movie that's about to come into Detroit right now. What do you think is going to happen with it?
A big movie that's coming into Detroit right now?
There was. What
Yeah.
I know it's been canceled. What do we think is going to happen with Kill Switch?
Yeah, well, he went out and he got the money from his investors. This killed the movie. You know, the stars have to align for that money to come back.
Okay.
So he's got the juice to make something happen, I think. But will the investors be there for him when we get back? Because there's really nothing preventing him from doing it other than the money.
I think for Soderbergh, I think, like, given his track record with the way he's conducted all of his projects since Che, that it will happen, that he'll make it happen, that he kind of steams forward with everything that he does.
Right. He didn't make any friends by recently, proclaiming in the trades that, he'd rather go full speed ahead right now. Damn the virus.
Did he say that?
Yeah. in the trades, and it's like the Sarah, Safety for Sarah group got hold of that, and he said, what's your, the crew's not going to stand for that. You're putting the crew in harm's way.
I have to say, the one that I hope I'm not like overstepping any secrecy boundaries. I don't think I am, but the one I was just on, they were so careful about that. I mean, it was all just coming. It was all just starting to make sense as our last days wound up. We just all started to realize how serious it was. Both production and just everybody in America was just realizing how serious it was. And I've got to say, they went way out of their way to make sure nobody was in any danger. They switched scenes to outdoor locations almost across the board, so that people could be shooting outdoors rather than indoors. And they obviously cut out, we had one great big scene that was supposed to be around a dinner table and couldn't be done any other way. And they just simply said, okay, you know what? We're not doing it. Put it aside. We'll do it when we come back. Which was exactly what they should have done. So, and I know that all of that came down from Netflix. Netflix was all over it as far as sending out, directives on how safe that they had to be. So that was, I know it made me feel better for sure. And honestly, it'll be interesting to see when we all come back to this, how it changes situations like that. Let's face it, every movie is going to have a scene in bed, or it's going to have a scene around the dinner table, or people in a jail cell. And whenever you do that, we're all crammed together just as crew on top of one another, trying to all cram in there and get that scene done in a relatively small space. And I think it will continue, because hopefully we'll get to a point where we have eradicated this, or at least made it a lot safer, and we can go back to essentially what we were doing. But it'll be interesting to see how that changes the approach to things like that.
On that note, I'm going to have to cut you off. We've got some time constraints.
Awesome.
Jim, thank you very much for speaking.
Andrew,
Thank
Mark,
you,
thank you very much for even having me. I appreciate it.